This is Big Tasty Sports.
We are 2 weeks and 1 day away from NFL. And shit, by the time you hear this, it'll be 2 weeks exactly, probably. So we are going to get an early look here at DFS for the first week. Tonight we got D Nice back after a busy summer to talk some DFS. D, how's it going tonight, man?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Pretty busy in the past couple of months. It's already at the end of the summer, which I guess it's two things. It's like it's kind of shitty. It's the end of it, but also we have football coming up in 2 weeks. But then it's a little bit of like chaos also. It's like, do I have my ducks in a row for week one NFL? And I think that the answer is 50% there. And hopefully at the end of this pod, I'll be 75% there. But happy to be here to get the football season kicked off again, fellas.
Dude, 75% wouldn't be bad with 2 weeks and 1 day left. You got that long to get the other 25% done. So you're all right.
Exactly.
And of course, Yanni donning the Ohio Bobcats shirt in honor of the games coming up Saturday. Yanni, how's it going?
It's going well down here, staying at the beach, so having a good time, but ready for some football also.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So we're going to walk through the week one schedule, some different positions that we like and all that stuff. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about strategy and even contests to look for. If you haven't done a lot of DFS, and Yanni is, I think, the most experienced of all of us. So Yanni, when you look at DFS slate in terms of contests and maybe a little bit of strategy, what are you looking for?
Yeah, it's good. And obviously, if you're experienced, some of this might be a little elementary for you. But if you are maybe newer or you're not sure, maybe you haven't had a lot of great success, picking the right contest is important. And I think when you look at the contest you want to get into, it depends a little bit on your strategy. And, do you want to play a lot of lineups? Do you want to just play one lineup? But personally, I like the single entry contest where you're only allowed to basically do one entry. And the reason being is there's so many analytics people out there that have figured out a little bit how to buck the system there. And, they'll put 100 entries in on a contest and they'll be able to find a way to win. And you're kind of fighting an uphill battle. So I think when you do those single entries, it kind of takes that out and it's a little bit more of a level playing field. So, I think those are important. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of game script, but really trying to figure out how to stack lineups. And I think you really got to take some chances, unless you're playing in a small contest. If you're playing in a big contest, you gotta try to get out there and find, it sounds cliche, but you got to find that sleeper. You got to take a chance on that guy that might blow up. And yeah, he may bust as well. But I think, you got to do that if you want to try to win, if you're playing in those big ones. And then the only other couple, I guess, suggestions I have is checking the inactive report if you're doing like a Sunday contest. That's critical because oftentimes you'll find a late scratch from a team that maybe wasn't expected. And if they have a capable backup, you can usually get them dirt cheap. And a lot of times I'll build late lineups and those will end up doing the best because you're able to find a guy for really cheap money who can get you some production and let you kind of, work your lineup around that. And then the last thing I have is when you're playing DFS, your eyes immediately go to those red and green opponent rankings because, obviously you want to find matchups. The first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, it's irrelevant. Don't pay too much attention to that until the season goes on. Those are last year rankings. And I don't even know if DraftKings does preseason rankings and things like that, but don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. Use your own handicaps for the first month or so of the season. Eventually those numbers will sort themselves out and then you can kind of use those as a guideline. But if a team was third against someone last year, it doesn't mean they're going to be this year. So really keep a close eye on that, especially the first few weeks. It's easy to get caught up with that and you don't want to. So those are just kind of a few high level thoughts I have when I'm trying to make my entries and figure out which contest to get into.
One pointer that I would have for people too is to go to betcrushers.com, and Yanni's got a bunch of stuff that's going to be coming out with rankings and different things. And like he said, to not just look at the green and red numbers, but know what you're doing. If you don't have time to do it all, follow someone like Yanni and the Bet Crushers, and you can get all those rankings and know what you should be looking for at the beginning of the season. D, when you do DFS, is there anything else like kind of riffing off what Yanni said or other things you didn't hear that you like to focus on?
He's the expert, but one, score more than your opponent. I think he's good at
That's gold, dude. That's gold.
The one that I had in mind was check the injury list for sure, because if you have a guy in there and then he gets scratched late, it's like, okay, you could probably get a guy for cheap that you didn't expect to have in there. And two, just try not to go all chalk. Like, you have to take some risks at times. Like, you can't just take all chalk. And other than that, follow Yanni, because he's got like 10 years. I have like 1. So I'm just, kind of working my way.
Uh-oh, we got a little freeze. We were doing so well, too.
Yeah.
There was no freezing.
I thought it would be my hotel Wi-Fi that messed things up here. I didn't, yeah.
Oh, well. Well, hopefully D's voice will pop back in here in a second. Agree with him about the pivots and all that kind of stuff. And Yanni, it made me think, oh, there, you're back. D, you're back.
Yeah, but it's a different computer this time, too. This
and honestly, it was doing very well up until that moment. So I think we'll be fine. We're going to be positive and believe we're going to be all good here.
Have to be positive.
Yep. Yanni, one thought I just had, and I'm like D, I don't have as much experience as Yanni either, but when you mentioned those large field contests where people can enter 100 times, or even the ones where it's like a 10 entry max, I don't know if it's 10, but there's 3 entry max, I know for sure. It almost feels like they're different games, where you really, if you want to play the big field ones, unless you're just getting a lottery ticket, you've got to play a lot of entries and think strategically about how to spread out the variance and risk across all those different lineups. And the pivots D was talking about, taking some risks. So definitely something to do some more research on, depending on what kind of contest you want to play. So, well, let's jump into the schedule first. And just as you guys look at that week 1 schedule, let's talk about any games that stand out to you in terms of game script, or ones that you just go, okay, that's one that I think I would want to target with some stacks. Stacks especially, probably. And not just individual team stacks. We can talk about that, but the game stack too, where you've got a primary stack and then people coming back from the other side as well. Just to open it up, what games stick out?
I'll jump in here. I mean, I've got a few that I think are very appealing. I think the Seattle LA Rams game in Seattle, I don't expect a whole lot from that Rams defense. So I think when you look at, you could potentially look at both wide receivers there. And I say both because unfortunately Jackson Smith and Jigba looks like he may miss that game. But I think Metcalf and Lockett are an option with Geno Smith. I think Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet are options at running back. So, I mean, I think that's a game you can keep an eye on. I like your Vikings. And when I say that, I think Tampa, we know, is going to clamp down on the run. So I think that, we're probably not going to see a lot of great stats from Madison. But I think when you look at Cousins, Jefferson, and then take your pick, Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, those kind of guys, I think you could get some potential points there as well. And then the other one I really like is I actually like the New Orleans Saints this week. And I like them kind of in the same concept. I don't like Jamal Williams here. I know he might be a popular name just because he's going to get a lot of workload potentially. Kind of the same thing. I think Tennessee is going to be solid against the run, but we saw last year you can throw on them, and I don't know that they're going to be substantially better against the pass, maybe a little bit. But when you look at that, you can get some really nice priced options with guys like Derek Carr and Michael Thomas, of course, Chris Olave. So those are some games that I really like, potentially the matchups with.
Yeah, to be fair, I have 8 games written down, but those are 3 of the ones that I had written down for sure. Like all of those. D, any others that are sticking out to you, or any of those that you're liking as well?
Yeah, Chargers and Dolphins is a pretty good one to target. It has a high total. I think that's above is that total of 51 now? So that's a game to target. You could take a look at Ekeler. I do like Seahawks and Rams. That should be, not sure about high scoring game, but like if you have Geno Smith is pretty good value in there. I like that one. In terms of other games to target, also number 1 on my list was that Chargers game. As I'm scanning through here, don't hate the Browns and the Bengals, but that's probably not my top game to stack. It's probably Chargers and Dolphins, honestly.
I love how you said you might like the Bengals and the Browns. I have them written down with a maybe beside it. So I think I'm on
Yeah, it's like I
the
don't know
same
what I'm
page as
getting
you
out of
there.
Watson yet. I don't know what the Joe
Yeah.
Burrow's deal is, and it's a divisional matchup. It could be low scoring. You'll probably get yards in that game, but yeah, it's a maybe.
Yeah, totally. Two others I'll just throw in. I'm mostly only interested in the Green Bay side of the Green Bay Chicago game. I hate to say that about Green Bay, but Chicago's defense was so bad last year, and I think they're improved, but I don't know if they're improved enough. And as we get into pricing, I think you could get a really nice Green Bay stack very cheap and then get some other really good guys. So I don't mind that one at all. And then Baltimore and Houston too. I mean, Houston, this new revamped team going to Baltimore with an offense that I think, from what we're hearing with Todd Monken, is going to be much more dynamic, much more spread. And so I think, again, for me, it would not be the Houston side, but maybe just the Baltimore side of that game is one that I'd be interested in as well. So, well, let's okay, those are some games to maybe look for. Let's just start talking through some of these quarterbacks. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit more about stacks and kind of where we'd want to go if we had one lineup to make. But let's go a position at a time a little bit. And when you look, and I'm looking at DraftKings, by the way, I know that FanDuel's out there too, but it feels like most people talk about DraftKings when they do this. In that top tier of quarterbacks, and you can take that down to whatever price you want, but who are the guys that you would consider getting onto your roster in week one who maybe have a higher price tag? So you're going to have higher expectations of what they need to bring to the table.
I'll go first. I mean, I think obviously Lamar Jackson is an interesting play if you want to dump some money into the quarterback position. You kind of mentioned they're at home. I generally like to play players that are playing at home when possible. I think, he has been a fast starter often in his career. So I think he's generally pretty safe there. But then, as D said, Justin Herbert's a nice option. I think that Miami, that could be a shootout, as he mentioned there. I think he's kind of that other kind of high-priced guy as far as if you really want to spend your money at the quarterback position. Those would be the two guys I would look at.
Yeah, agreed on those two for sure. Lamar is one that when I was just building some lineups out, when I was thinking through variants where I wouldn't stack as much, Lamar was definitely someone I was thinking about getting in there because I think he could have a huge game by himself. And it's a little more uncertain where he might go with the ball. D, any other quarterbacks up near the top of the price range that stick out to you?
Highest price QB that I have in my lineup so far is actually Tua at $6,700. So he's not the top tier. If I had to go top tier, I probably wouldn't say Fields. I'd probably go with Lamar as well. He's been known to start off extremely hot. Houston's not a good team. He's expensive at $8K, but in terms of top tier, I'd probably go with him as well. Good old Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. That's I had Lamar and Herbert written down. So what about we'll talk about maybe if there's anybody down at the bottom that you could kind of dumpster dive for, but what about more in the middle here? Maybe, I don't know what it is, like 66, 6,700 and down, but not all the way down to the bottom. I'm being very specific.
Yeah, right.
D, let's go to you first. Do you have anybody you like in that mid tier?
In the mid tier, I've got Geno, 6,300. I think he has plenty of weapons there, and the Rams should be a shell of what they were. I like Geno in that spot. I also have Tua, which you could say that he's in the mid tier. Just have to hope that he does not suffer his sixth concussion of his life. But in a high total game, I do like Tua. Who else do I have? I'll save that one. Watson, I guess you could consider. Is that mid tier or lower tier? That's probably mid tier.
Oh, yeah, that's mid, probably.
6K.
No, I'd say that's mid. I'd say
then,
down to a little 5,000 or a little above.
But don't know as to what we're getting from him. I mean, to get him at QB 10, in the past you'd say, okay, great, but it's okay, don't know as to what we're getting. I would say Geno and Tua are my two favorite in the mid tier. Okay,
what about you, Yanni?
Yeah, I like both of those. I think Tua's a nice option here, and I think Geno, as I mentioned, I think is good. But I would also say Kirk Cousins going just a little bit lower there. I mean, I think that he, as I mentioned, I think those are kind of my three mid-tier guys that I would really keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I had Geno and Trevor Lawrence. I'm not sure about that Indy defense, and now they're on the road, so that's something to consider. But I like the upside for Lawrence with his ability to run the ball as well. But I mean, I know he doesn't run as much, but he definitely can get out and scramble some. So think quite a bit of alignment around Geno Smith there at least, which makes sense with the Rams coming to Seattle. All right, let's go down to that kind of bottom tier, wherever you want to put that, maybe, around that 55, 5,600 and down. Yanni, any guys at the bottom that you'd actually be interested in playing?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned Derek Carr. He's at 5,300. I think that, this is a great potential week to play him. And I understand if you're a little hesitant, we want to kind of see how he does in New Orleans. And I do think Tennessee's defense is going to be better overall. But I think the matchup is going to play to his favor there. So I like him. And then Jordan Love, it sounds crazy, but you kind of mentioned that Chicago defense. I'm not convinced. Do I think they'll be a little bit better than last year? Yeah, I do. Are they going to be great? I don't think so. And I mean, Love has looked good in the preseason. I understand it's preseason, but you're talking about $5,000. If you play Jordan Love, you got a lot of money left to play some other players. So I think that those are the two guys at the bottom that I would strongly consider playing.
How about you, D? Dumpster diving for quarterbacks. What do you think?
Probably not a popular pick, and you have to go to the dumpster. But Anthony Richardson at $5,600. Do we know what we're getting with him? Hell no. But we know that he's freakishly fast. He's at home. He's got Steichen, good new head coach. Maybe don't turn the ball over more than twice, but would it shock you if he had 100 yards on the ground, if he had 2 TDs on the ground? I mean, you could do worse at that price point. But again, first career NFL start. I don't expect him to be RG3 in his first career NFL start. Though if he is, you're probably going to want to have him in your lineup. So if you want to go towards the bottom, I got Richardson on the Colts.
Yep. Two of the ones you guys said are what I have. So Richardson, here's the thing that I am interested in with him is, number one, I think the Jaguars defense and their offensive line are question marks. I mean, their defense might end up being all right, but I don't think we're sure. And I wonder if Richardson's going to be one read, maybe two, then pull it down and try to run.
And just run.
So I could see him. Yeah, D, I could see him having a huge. I mean, I could also see him throwing 2 picks, and running for 140 yards or something.
And have 3 fumbles. Then he throw
right. All that's on the
and
table.
then pretend like I didn't say anything. Yeah.
Yep. But I could see a lot of yards on the ground from him. I like Jordan Love. We already talked about that. And the other one for me, and I hope I'm not getting sucked in by watching one preseason game, because that can happen. But the Cardinals go to Washington to start the season, and Sam Howell has looked very competent. And all of the reports out of camp, I mean, most people aren't going to trash their quarterback in camp, right? But it sounds positive for him. And I finally watched a preseason game. He made some really nice throws in that game. It wasn't just that he had good numbers, but he had 2 errant throws that I saw, but most of them looked pretty good. And going against a soft defense, I mean, he's $4,900. And he does have some weapons. So again, if you want to get a stack in where you can get some of these other top tier players, Washington's a team I'm considering with Sam Howell there. Any thoughts? Let's just talk about Sam Howell quick. Yanni, is that someone you would consider, or do you think it's just too soon to try to play someone like that?
Well, I mean, I talked at the opening about having to take some chances. And I mean, I think that is a good potential chance to take if you're prepared for it to fall flat, because it certainly could. But I think, to your point, it's a great matchup. You're getting potential value with Howell in the sense that he's basically free. And like you said, they've got weapons. This is a matchup. It's a home matchup against a bad defense. So, I think you could absolutely make the case, like you said, for stacking something there and kind of seeing what happens. Knowing, again, same thing with Richardson. I mean, we don't know for sure what's going to happen there, but I think you got to take those chances, because that's potentially, especially if you're playing in these larger contests, you're going to need to find some things like that occasionally to win those.
Yeah, D, chance on Howell for you, or what do you think on that one?
Have to roll the dice, right? I mean, if I'm going to have 10 total lineups, he'll probably be in there on one. I don't think that the Cardinals are good. I expect them to have 1 or 2 wins. I don't think that they're going to win this game. They have a terrible defense. He's looked good. To your point, you're probably not going to trash the guy in training camp, but they should be able to move the ball, and he's free. He's at the same price as like backup quarterbacks.
Right.
Totally.
So you could get him, or you could have Minshew at $4,900, and he's not even starting. So I would rather have Sam Howell at $4,900. You could stack it with like Scary Terry, right? And then if they connect twice because the Cardinals are awful, you might be in business to make some money in a couple lineups. So Tasty, I like where your head's at.
Yep.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, that's some of the quarterbacks. Let's move on to the running backs. And here, it's not going to be as common with a running back, but if you have anybody you like pairing these guys with too, we can talk about that as we go. So let's look at that top tier of running backs, and I'm going to arbitrarily set the top tier as 7,500 and up.
Okay.
So Yanni, when you look at that 7,500 and up, who are a couple guys that you'd want to target in that tier?
Yeah, I don't, for week one here, I don't really love a lot of the running back matchups, so I'm probably going to spend my money in other positions. But I think that Austin Ekeler is certainly in play. We talked about that game with the Chargers and Dolphins there. And you mentioned stacking running backs. Ekeler is a guy you can stack because he does catch a lot of passes. So, if you're playing Herbert, you can still play Ekeler and you can still kind of double down with them. I don't overall, I kind of want to see, I'm still a little mildly skeptical, but I think Bijan Robinson, he's got a favorable matchup there. He's at home. I think that he's going to want to show out there. Again, you're kind of taking a chance, and especially if you're spending that kind of money at the position, you can't afford for that to fall flat. So again, I personally won't do that. But I think if you're looking for the top guys at the top, Robinson and Ekeler are the guys I would really look at here.
All right, D, what about you?
At the top so far in my lineups, the only top tier guy I have is Ekeler. He's pricey, but look, he was priced higher for like all of last year. And in a game that should have plenty of points, a pretty good game script, to Yanni's point, he can catch plenty of passes. You could put him with Sam Howell and put another stud in there also. So I do like Ekeler at 8,400. It wouldn't be shocking to me if he was 9K or more after week one.
Yeah, it's hard not to think that Ekeler is probably the best, at least most obvious place to go of this top tier of running backs because of the matchup and the way that game's likely to go. As I was building lineups, I found myself going to Chubb frequently. I just wonder if I will some this year because I think that could be an okay matchup at least against the Bengals defense. And I just think that offensive line is great and Nick Chubb is great. And so the upside there is hard for me to ignore. And then the other one that I will say I ended up either once or twice more as a pivot throwing in. This goes back to our fantasy draft, Yanni, and where you went in the first round is to Derrick Henry. I don't think he's going to get much ownership at all because I don't look at him and be like, oh, I got to get him in my lineup. But I found myself having the salary at times with another lineup that I liked. And I just thought, man, he's going to get fed. And it's early in the season, should be healthy. So I don't mind him as a potential pivot.
Yeah, it's in a dome. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's look then at that middle tier, and we'll go down 5,600 and up. D, do you have anybody in that 5,600 and up tier that you're liking?
5,600 and up. I do like enough to have in a lineup so far Cam Akers. I do like that one. Seahawks, not too good against the run last year. I think I had the stats written down here, but they were third worst against the run, fourth in yards per carry. So I like Akers there. It's not the sexiest of plays, but if he was the sexiest of plays, he'd be priced at a higher price than that. So 6,200, pretty good. And that's a game that I think should have pretty good game script. So I like him at 6,200. Looking at other names that I don't have in lineups yet, but I could get on board with, that's in the lower tier. So I'm going to pitch it over to Yanni, actually.
It's a little dry in the middle tier here.
It is dry. I've got a lot of Cam Akers. I've got Ekeler, and I keep on stacking that in there. And then I've got some bottom of the barrel crap.
It's a tough week for running backs, I think. When I look at it here, and again, some of these, there's still a little bit of uncertainty going into the season. We kind of have to see, but this may speak to it. But I like J.K. Dobbins in this matchup here. I think that, he should get some work there. Do I love it? Not necessarily, just because, again, he may not get as much work as I would like if I'm playing him, so I probably won't. But I do think Dobbins has a lot of upside this week against that. And then I like Travis Etienne. I mean, I'm going to like him a lot. I think that, he's going to be one of those consistent performers. Tank Bigsby has looked good, and I know they'll probably give him some touches, but I think Etienne's a pretty safe play there, and he's, reasonably priced there. He's at, I think, 68 or 6,900.
Yep. You guys have said the two. I've had Etienne in some lineups, and then I like Cam Akers too, D. I think especially you look at that game and how good is Seattle's defense going to be? We think they're going to be improved, but that defensive line has not necessarily been incredibly strong. I mean, they weren't last year. And so we'll see this year, but Cam Akers showed some flashes of being really good and being able to break runs. So I think especially if you want to stack up the Seahawks, Cam Akers isn't a bad way to come back with somebody from the Rams. So I'm with you on that, man.
Cool. Let's do it.
All right, let's drop down. I was gonna go all the way to the bottom, but I feel like there should just be like dumpster diving specials, and I don't know that we're to the dumpster yet. So maybe let's go like down to 5,000 and above. No, that's too small. Well, let's go to 4,500 and above. How about that? Yanni, 4,500 and up. Are there some other guys that stick out to you there?
Yeah, I think to me, two guys that I like are Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson in Washington. We kind of talked about that game with Sam Howell. I think that defense is going to be bad against the run, I'm guessing. So I think that, those are guys that they kind of split time. I would prefer Robinson, even though I know Gibson catches a little bit more. But I think with Robinson, you really have a running back one who's kind of priced more at that backup level, similar to Sam Howell. So I think Robinson's in play. And then another guy I kind of like is Samaje Perine. I think they have a very favorable matchup with the Raiders. And Javonte Williams is coming off his ACL surgery. I don't know that they're going to want to give him, 20 carries right out of the gate there. So I think Perine will get some work. And whenever he's on the field, he produces. So favorable matchup. He's probably going to get a little more work than maybe some people expect. So I think, again, if you're looking for some value or bargain with running backs, Perine's where I'm looking, and Robinson and Gibson, I think, are options there.
And the guess is that Sean Payton's going to want to run the ball some too, right? So that makes Perine probably a good look. D, how about you in this bottom middle tier? Anything else that's jumping out for you?
Lower tier, I have Robinson for sure for all of the reasons that we have mentioned. The Cardinals have a terrible run D. They allowed 5th most rushing touchdowns last year, 21, 3rd most catches to running backs. And I think that to the point that Yanni made, I mean, you could be getting a steal here. Like this could be an RB1 priced at $5,000. I mean, sign me up for that. He could have 2 touchdowns. He did get shot last year. So he did start the season off rough, right? But he had 20 or more touches 6 times, and that was pretty high up there. Like if they continue to do that, he should have plenty of opportunity. So I do have Robinson exposure. This one, not sexy at all. $5,500. Rachaad White. He's on Tampa. I know it's Baker Mayfield, but he'll be checking the ball down. He does grab some passes, and the running back room in Tampa is not really good. So if you can, grab 5 balls, run for 60 yards against your Vikings and maybe score, you could do worse at a price point of $5,500. So those are the 2 guys I'm looking at there.
Well, Rachaad White probably was among the higher frequency running backs that's in my lineups right now. And maybe I have to see the Vikings defense be better. I mean, I do think having Brian Flores is going to help, but it's not like they got way better personnel wise. And they, like you said, he can catch the ball. He can run the ball. I think they're going to lean on him pretty heavily. And so I think he could have a big game, honestly. And I think that's where this is one of the games that I'm open to looking at in terms of a stack on the Minnesota side or even on the Tampa Bay side. I just don't know that. I think it could be high scoring. I don't think Minnesota's defense is going to be lights out from the jump here. So yeah, so I like that one. I liked Brian Robinson too, that you guys brought up, but just to go a couple different directions, I think Raheem Mostert is worth a look. That's that game against the Chargers where the script should be good. And, he's got the ability to break some things and I think should get an okay workload at least. And then the other one is a little bit of,
We should mention on that, not to cut you off, but both of his, backmates are kind of questionable heading into the start of the season there. So, to your point, he could have a nice workload in that game.
That's something to watch for sure, especially with Jeff Wilson, right? Like A-Chain, it doesn't sound like they're expecting to give him a lot of work, even if he's healthy at the outset. So, yeah, that's a great point, Yanni, of watching those injuries. And then the other guy that I was just going to say, and this is just a little bit, we talk about trying to take some chances and get a little bit different. It's a little cryptic right now what's going to be going on in the Seahawks backfield, but it sounds like Zach Charbonnet may have more of a role than we would have thought when he was drafted, and he's a guy who can catch the ball as well. And so in a game that's a little more wide open, obviously run, catch, whatever, but he's cheaper than Kenneth Walker is the thing that I would say. So he's only $4,800. If you want to get a little bit different and still get in on the Seahawks, that is a direction I don't mind looking as well. Any thoughts on that? I don't know if either of you have heard anything else about the Seahawks backfield situation that I haven't either.
No, I think what you heard is, I think Charbonnet is going to get some work in that backfield. And I would not be surprised. I think he has that kind of burst and athleticism. Who knows? He could end up being their running back one by week 4 or 5. We don't know how that's going to look, but I like it. I think he's a real solid play this week.
Cool. Well, let's dumpster dive a little bit with some running backs down below 4,500. Is there anywhere that you guys think we could look? I don't even remember whose turn it is to go first.
It's probably mine, but I currently don't have anybody in my lineups down below 4,500.
I don't either. So
I probably need to scrape here. You could probably get. Is Swift on the Eagles below 4,500? No, like he's mid-5s.
Gainwell is.
You could get Gainwell. If he's playing the Giants, he'll always score, but he's not playing the Giants. So I'm trying to think here. This is really dumpster diving here, Tasty.
It really is. There's no doubt. Well, I have one guy. If this Jonathan Taylor situation doesn't resolve, Deion Jackson is 4,100. And we still don't know what the split will be there. It's not like Deion Jackson's anything to write home about, but at 4,100, he's a piece you could fit in who, if Jonathan Taylor isn't there, he could get some decent work in a game. So that was the only one I had.
I like it.
He'll probably be in a lineup or two, or maybe, because you got to take risks, man. If he actually just does anything on the field at all, then you could be in business.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing with this is like, and I'm curious how you guys have experienced this in football, but I've done a lot more DFS on the NBA side, actually. And there are those times where you just kind of get a free square, right? Like it's a guy who's getting a role that he normally wouldn't get, and his salary is so cheap that you just have to play him. Yep. And if Deion Jackson's going to get a decent workload, that was sort of the way it felt to me. It's like, this is just a cheap free square and I can look elsewhere. So
that's it, man.
All right. Well, let's move on to wide receivers. And I need to arbitrarily set the top tier here again. Let's go with $7,000 and up. And D, we'll go back to you. Who are the names that stick out to you in that $7K and up range?
7,000 or up, it's probably no brainers, right? But I like Tyreek Hill, high scoring game. Tua should be look at him pretty early and often. If you spend him on $82, you obviously have to not spend $8,200 on all your other positions. I do like Hill. Jamar Chase, I'm going to hold back on until I see what Joe Burrow looks like. I like AJ Brown as usual because I'm an Eagles fan. Am I a little bit hesitant because the Eagles are on the road and the Patriots have had a whole offseason to game plan? Yes. But A.J. Brown will probably appear in a lineup or two of mine because it's only year 2 of Hurts to Brown, and they had hell of a connection last year for 14, 15 touchdowns, and I think that they'll be back.
Yeah, they sure did. I wouldn't mind them lighting up the Patriots to start off the season, personally.
Me and you both.
I was going to say no hate, but there's a little hate, so I didn't want to lie.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, it's normal. It's normal.
Yanni, how about for you in that top tier? What are you thinking?
I'm spending my money here, and I'm playing your guy Jay Jettis here. I mean, he obviously he's as high as anyone out there, but he's about as sure of a thing, I think, in week 1 as you can have. Again, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well, so I think by default he's going to get a lot of looks. Again, potential stack with Cousins there. And then I like DK Metcalf. Again, Smith and Jigba's out, and we mentioned that Rams defense. I think Metcalf at home could have a nice game there. So those are a couple of the bigger name guys that I would have my eyes on.
Yeah, I'm similar here. I'll just say 3 that I'm highest on. One is Jefferson, especially if I'm going to do anything with that game. Though, I mean, if I'm doing a one-off, he could be in that as well. DK Metcalf, just like you just said, JSN out. He could have a big game. And then Jalen Waddle's the other one for me. And really only because he's cheaper than Tyreek Hill. I like Tyreek Hill a ton and think he's super dynamic. But I think both of these guys are going to get a high target share. And so if you're going to give me an $1,100 discount on one of them at the beginning of the season, I'll just go ahead and take the discount and see how it goes.
That's fair.
So
that's a smart.
Or if I'm stacking them up, I might try to get them both in there somehow. It'd be tough to do, but you could try it.
Yep, and just hope for like a high scoring game that's like 45, 42.
As long as you got Deion Jackson at running back, you can make that happen. So.
That's what you got to do. Hey, I have like 1 or 2 other plays here I think you could use to supplement to be able to do that kind of stuff yet too. So all right, well, let's drop down. I'm going to stick to 3 tiers this time. We're just changing it up at every position. So let's go down to $5,000. Yanni, 5,000 and up. What are some targets for you?
I got a bunch in that range. I mean, Tyler Lockett, I think, broken record, but without Smith and Jigba. And I also think that, Lockett's kind of the forgotten guy. So I think he's kind of, he could relish this type of opportunity and have a big game. I like Olave in New Orleans. I mean, I think that, again, we talked about Tennessee last year not being able to really stop the pass. I think Calvin Ridley's an interesting option. I think what worries me about the Colts is their secondary. I don't think they're particularly strong there. A little bit of a risk with Ridley, but a lot of potential reward there. And then what was your cutoff there? Sorry.
All the way down to 5,000. So it's a big range. So
yeah, I got a couple more.
Keep throwing them out.
I think Deontay Johnson's an interesting player just because
he's on my list.
Yeah, at his price tag, 5,400. I think they're going to struggle running against San Francisco. I think they're going to have to throw. Pickett's looked good. I mean, I think that Johnson could be an interesting play. I really like Michael Thomas this week, and I understand that he hasn't basically played football in 3 years. I get it. But if he enters the season healthy against that Tennessee defense, it was only 3 years ago that he was that $8,000 receiver every week. And, now he's at $5,000 or $5,100. I think that there is a lot of potential for him in that game to catch 8 or 9 passes and have 100 yards and, maybe score. So I think he's got some value there in that range as well. And then lastly, I love overall Jahan Dotson. I think I've talked about him before, and you talked about Sam Howell. I think Dotson this week, again, we talked about the Cardinals. I think, he's a guy, to me, he's as good as those guys in the $6,000, $7,000 range, and he's at $5,000. So I think, that's more an indication of Sam Howell than it is anything. But if you're a believer, like you said, that Howell might be able to do it. And again, it's all about matchups, and this Cardinals defense is not going to be very good.
Yeah, I had a star next to Jahan Dotson. I think that price tag is crazy right now. And Terry McLaurin, the injury doesn't sound serious, but he did get injured. I saw an MRI was negative. So yes, he's probably back for week 1, but that would be another injury I would say to just pay attention to. And even if McLaurin's out there, like what percentage is he at? Is he a full go or not? Even if he is, I mean, I think Dotson is still a good play. So I love that one too, Yanni. And I think he and a couple others can make for a decent stack with the Commanders too. So D, big range here. What do you like?
It's a pretty big range, and I'm pretty sure Yanni and I are going to have a lot of same lineups. So if we're in the same pools, I think that we're going to have a lot of same wide receivers. Agree all
connect and play different contests.
Dotson. I have Olave in a couple of my lineups. 6,500 just seems too cheap. Carr, I'm sure, will be trying to air it out and to go to him early and often in his first game at the Saints in the Dome. Olave, pretty good overall for a rookie last year. Titans, not good against the pass. They were actually dead last in receiving yards for the Titans last year, third most for Yak, which is impressive. So I like Olave. 6,500. Who else do I have here? I like Christian Watson at 6K. I know that they don't have Rodgers anymore there. I don't know what we're going to have with Jordan Love, but I think it'll be a serviceable enough quarterback. Rodgers didn't like pre-snap motion, and apparently they're trying to bring that into the mix now. So I don't expect Watson to light it up like he did in the second half of the year, but I know that he'll have a pretty huge snap count. So I like Watson as well. And those are my top three, I think, in that range.
Yeah, in this range, it almost feels like we could just read down the list and be like, that guy's pretty good. That guy's pretty good. But I'm going to repeat a couple of the names you said, but I think a couple of these guys, we're going to look back and be like, remember when they were priced so low in week one? And I think Calvin Ridley and Olave are two of those guys. So Yanni, you mentioned it, but I think Calvin Ridley's poised to have a big year, and I don't think he's in this tier anymore within a few weeks. I think Olave, the same thing could happen. So I really like both of those guys. I like Lockett, especially if you're doing a Seahawks stack. I like Mike Williams quite a bit as well in that Chargers game. I think he could end up looking more like the number one receiver out there this year. And so, again, especially if you're going to stack that game up, I like him. And then the other one, just as maybe, we talk about getting a little bit different, and this could be a little different. I don't mind throwing Evans and Godwin into a stack. I mean, I would even maybe take one shot on putting Baker with them. That secondary for the Vikings is thin, and it wasn't good last year. And Baker Mayfield tends to have, remember last year with the Rams, he came in and he had a couple games where you're like, oh my gosh, this might be the guy. And then he was Baker Mayfield again.
How did he do that? Like, he had like 2 days rest. It was like, this is just
totally
not real. It's like when he came in on Thursday Night Football, and I was like, I know this guy sucks, but he's got something here.
But it doesn't look like it.
That was one of the craziest things I've seen in a long time, honestly. Yeah.
Totally. So I just think, what if he does it again? And again, especially if you're talking about playing 10, 20 plus lineups, I don't mind one shot on that. And I think that if that's the case, this is going to be a really high scoring game. And I think it could be the game you want to be in on if the Bucks can do something on offense. So
Yanni's favorite quarterback in Baker Mayfield, but he's so cheap. Like, he's priced with backup quarterbacks, essentially, that if he can light it up, and even if he has a turnover or two, it's like, if he's got 3 touchdowns and you stack it, then all of a sudden Tampa might win you some money. So I like where your head's out there.
Maybe you even commit one of the cardinal sins and just play the Vikings defense and count on him to get a pick 6 in there somewhere too, along with
definitely have a pick 6
he throws.
Definitely.
All right. Let's dumpster dive on the receivers. I don't know that it's the dumpster yet, actually, but we'll go below $5,000. D, are there any names that stick out to you as you look in that bottom tier?
Below 5,000. Do I have any written down here? I don't. I do hate Thielen. There's not anybody really in that below 5,000 category. I love Dotson at 5,000, but that's not. I could do a Uke at 4,900. Like, that's actually okay. Like, I don't expect a lot out of him, but I know that he has an ability, to put up some points, and that's a pretty good price. Don't know what we're getting with Purdy. Trey Lance is not going to be on the field, I can tell you that much, but at Pittsburgh, kind of a tough matchup, but they have had an offseason to plan. So I think that Shanahan can get the ball to a Uke. So sign me up for a Uke at $4,900.
Yanni.
I agree with Ayuk, and I don't love the matchup at all, but I think, he's a receiver when we talk about being mispriced, he's better than $4,900. So I think that even though the matchup isn't great, there's some inherent value just getting him at that price point. So I don't hate that, but a couple guys, Tasty, you and I talked about Nico Collins. He's under that 5,000 mark. By default, he's going to catch some passes in that game. You know what I mean? So it's like, how well he's going to do, I don't know, but he's going to get some work in that game, and he's at 4,700. I like Romeo Doubs. I think that, along with Christian Watson, again, good matchup with the Bears there. I think he has upside for sure. And then I like your guy, KJ Osborne, there again in a stack at 4,300. I think that, he's the kind of guy that he's probably, at least early in the season, going to get some work until we kind of see what we get with the rookie there. So I think that, again, favorable matchup throwing the football in that game. So those are some lower priced guys that I think have some definite upside.
Yeah, I probably like this tier too much, to be honest. I have a fair number of guys written down. Romeo Dobbs is one. Whatever you want to put into narratives, what you hear is that Jordan Love has the best connection or chemistry or whatever with Romeo Dobbs. And, maybe true, maybe not, but he's cheap if you want to try to find out. So I don't mind that. One of my favorite guys this week, as I've been building lineups, has been Zay Flowers. And I know he's had a big preseason, but I mean, what are we getting out of Odell Beckham? We don't know. Rashad Bateman, if he's really healthy, he's good. And they have Mark Andrews for sure. But Zay Flowers is $4,000, and he's a legit receiver. So I think to take a shot on him at $4,000 seems like a good deal to me. Also, DJ Chark could get a lot of work, so I don't mind that. And then my very, very bottom of the dumpster one is Braxton Berrios, who by all accounts is not only returning kicks in Miami, but actually is going to play slot receiver some, and he's $3,000. So if you need somebody really cheap to just plug in and it maybe get you a few points at least in an open game, Braxton Berrios is one you could consider. So any thoughts on any of those guys, like yay, nay?
I think Berrios is interesting.
I'm probably going to put them in my lineups. I'm just inserting them into lineups right now, actually. just trying to mix and match with Sam Howell, actually. Just complete degenerate here on Wednesday night.
I think Berrios is definitely an interesting guy. Like you said, if you have a lineup and you don't have any money left, he's a guy that, again, you're taking a flyer on him. Obviously, you could end up with 0 points, but I think he definitely, like you said, I think he's going to get some work, and he's the kind of guy that makes plays.
All right. Well, let's move on to the tight ends. And guys, I have to deliver this news. We're only going to do 2 tiers of tight ends.
It's probably good.
We're going to start out with
there's not that many options.
I know. We're going to start out with 4,100 and up. Yanni, 4,100 and up. What do you think?
I don't mind spending money at the tight end position on guys like Andrews and Hockenson. And, obviously he's not in this week, but Kelsey, but not necessarily this week, though. I don't know that, certainly Andrews could have a big game. Hockenson could have a big game, but I don't love him this week. I would actually go more with a guy like Dallas Goedert. And, if I'm spending money this week on tight end, and it's, for me, it's pretty simple. Belichick, we know he's going to be keyed in on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, he's going to be game planning for that. The strength of that Patriots team is that cornerback position and their pass rush. So I think that for me, when I look at Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, how much time is Jalen Hurts going to have, even with that offensive line, to really get the ball downfield? I think this could be a Dallas Goedert type game there. And then Evan Engram, I think for me, he's going to be a popular play, in a lot of weeks, just because I think the second half of last season, he and Lawrence were in sync, and he put up some nice games, in the second half of the season. So I think, on the higher end, those are a couple guys that you can really look at there.
Yep. Anybody for you, D? Same ones, different ones?
I agree with Goddard. He's always pretty damn consistent. So I have him in 2 of my lineups so far. He's priced at what, $5K? Yeah. I like Higbee also. I mean, he's not sexy, but Stafford likes to go to him. And I mean, in a game that should be, I'm not going to call it high scoring, but pretty close, I think that Higbee should get plenty of action. So you could do worse there. And he's priced at just shy of $5K. I like Ingram as well. And if I say anything else, it'll be liking half the list. So if I had to take anybody on there, I'd probably go with Goddard.
Could just be like, pull up the thing, don't look at the screen, and point. That's the guy.
Just point. Right. I do like Higbee and Goddard quite a bit, though, in that range.
Higbee's a good play, I think, as well. I really like him this week. I think he's got a lot of, again, I keep using the word upside, but he's definitely got it this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in sync. I don't mind Hockenson this week, though. Goddard, Ingram, Higbee. Those were the 3 that I really like in this range as well. And I think, Yanni, for what you said about the way that the Patriots are likely to approach this, but we know that the Eagles are a really good offense too. So I think Goddard is probably a really good play at $5,000. So love it. D, diving below $5,000. Any tight ends you see there that you would consider playing?
I do. I have Hunter Henry and a couple of them so far, priced at $3,500. I know it's week 1, but he's got Bill O'Brien and he loves to go to tight ends, and he's priced at tight end 18. And it could just be because I'm an Eagles fan, but I feel like over and over again, I'm just like, these tight ends are just lighting this team up. And at tight end 18, I'm like, okay, I kind of like that there. Like, I don't know if I would rather have him than a Dallas Goedert, but at that price point, I think it's kind of hard to beat. And he's not going to kill you, I think, there. He'll grab enough at that price point. So tight end 18, Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry, a good call, I think. Yanni, any Hunter Henry or anybody else in this range for you?
Yeah, apparently I didn't follow instructions with my Evan Ingram pick. I didn't catch the 5,000.
Was he lower?
Yeah, he's at 4,700. That was my bad. So
we could just pretend like it was 5,100.
I think I misspoke. We were going all the way down to 4,100. So that I just said it wrong. It's bad hosting. You follow the rule.
That's okay. I just want to be a rule follower. That's all.
You're doing it. You're already doing it.
Trying to do the right thing.
I think there's a couple guys that are a little bit better bargains. A guy that I'm really high on this year, and we'll see, Jahan Dotson in New Orleans. I think that he is potentially going to play kind of that Darren Waller role with Derek Carr. And of course, I've mentioned the matchup down there with throwing the ball against Tennessee. He's at 3,900, I believe. And then Hayden Hurst, kind of like in that same breath of Jahan Dotson. I don't know necessarily the matchup's great. It's okay. They're playing Atlanta, and obviously there's some questions on the quarterback end and all that. But I think $3,000, he's a better tight end than some of those guys above him. So I think, again, if you need a lower priced option, he's the kind of guy to D's point. He's going to get you a few catches. You also look at that and say, you got a young quarterback. Young quarterbacks often lean on that tight end, kind of those quick reads and security blankets and that. So those are a couple of the lower guys.
Speaking of young quarterbacks relying on a security blanket, if he's healthy, Logan Thomas is someone that I'd consider looking to, especially paired up with Jahan Dotson, I think, and then Sam Howell. That could be an okay stack, but you can never really count on Logan Thomas to be healthy. So you'll want to watch that one. And then two others just really good. I agree with a lot of what you guys have said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But Luke Musgrave, by all accounts, is going to be pretty involved in that Packers offense. He's only $2,900. So that's a cheap tight end you could go to. And then my very bottom end, which this is a total flyer, but is Johnny Smith at 2,700. Not being back in Atlanta, but back with the coaches that he's used to back in Atlanta. And I know they have Kyle Pitts, but Kyle Pitts hasn't done a ton. And we're talking about $2,700. And Johnny Smith a couple years ago was crushing it at tight end. So that's just a flyer. That
they don't run a lot of 4 receiver sets in Atlanta generally. So
True.
You're going to have 2 tight end sets even with Pitts and Smith in there together.
Yeah, great point. All right, well, we've almost made it through. We're not going to spend a lot of time on defense, but maybe just talk about like your approach to defense, and if there's any. We're not going to do any tiers for defense. 0 tiers on this one, but if any defenses stick out, Yanni, what's your approach, and what do you think for this week?
I think generally speaking, defense is a crapshoot, and you need a little bit of luck most of the time. Sometimes there's a matchup at the top where if you can afford it and you've got a dominant defense like San Francisco or somebody playing a really bad offense, sometimes you can justify that. But usually I go cheap on defense because we see it every week. Whatever, the Cardinals get a pick 6, the Texans get a pick 6. Things happen. And, so I don't generally want to spend a lot of money on defense. I do like to generally have a home defense. I think out of all of the positions, defense is generally best at home. I try not to take them on the road, even though obviously the better defenses travel. But the one I really like this week is Washington. I think, first of all, I think they have a very good defense anyways, but they're at home and they get that Arizona Cardinals offense, which, I don't think that offense is terrible. I don't think it's a huge downgrade to have Colt McCoy playing there. I don't think they're going to be awful, but I also don't think they're going to be good. And I think this is the type of game where you can get a home defense with an opportunity where they could rack up 5 or 6 or 7 sacks. They could get some turnovers and make some plays. So I think they're at 2,800. So they're kind of right, in the middle, even maybe a little more towards the bottom there.
D, similar approach for you. Any other ones that stick out to you to try to fit in for this first week?
I love the Commanders here. Yeah, I typically don't try to overspend there. It's a crapshoot. I try to go with home teams as well. I try to target crappy QBs, and that's what we have in Arizona. It's like, okay, I have the Commanders actually in all of my lineups so far, which is going to need to change. But at $2,800, it's like I would rather have that than like anything else above it. So like, don't overspend. Try to target a matchup against young quarterbacks at times is pretty good as well. But to Yanni's point, I mean, the Cardinals might have 6 sacks, plenty of turnovers, and then if you can get a pick 6 at $2,800, you're sitting pretty right there, man.
Yeah, same strategy for me. I definitely don't want to spend more than I need to when it comes to defense. I like that Commanders play at 2,800. I was interested in the Packers as well. I mean, Justin Fields was an interception machine last year. Maybe he won't be this year, and I think the Packers defense should be pretty good actually. So that's one that I like. And then dropping down a little lower, I thought the Raiders at 2,300. I don't think that the Raiders have a great defense, but I don't know yet how good Denver's offense is going to be, and I don't know yet how good Russell Wilson's actually going to be. And so that's one on the road. Yanni, you talked about trying to take him at home, but if I'm looking down at that very bottom, I think Minnesota scores a lot of points, even if there are any turnovers there, and I don't want to take the Texans against Baltimore. So the Raiders are the next one up, and I think out of those bottom 3, that's probably where I'd want to go. Real quick, if you did have to fit in one of those bottom 3 defenses, would you guys go to the Bucs or Texans over the Raiders? It's like the hardest question Yanni's ever been asked.
Probably the hardest question of the show, and we're dealing with the worst defenses in week 1.
I think if you're going with the bottom 3, you're right. I think the Raiders would be the play for the reason you mentioned. So yeah, I mean, if you have to, and we didn't really talk about this, but they're generally, when you talk about the DFS community, there's 2 strategies. Some people like to pick their defense first and then build their lineup around that. Other people like to build their lineup and then take whatever is left that they can fit in with their defense. So I think you kind of have to look at it that way. I mean, if you're building it first, which is what I like to do, I'm going with the Commanders and building around it in this case. But to your point, if you're building your lineup and you love your lineup and you've only got, $2,300, $2,400, $2,500, yeah, I mean, you can take a flyer with the Raiders for what you said. I mean, they could get a pick 6. They could have some sacks on Russell Wilson, that kind of thing. So, but I'm with you. Yeah, definitely out of those bottom 3, I think the Raiders would be the play for sure.
D, any dissension, or are you good?
No dissension. I'm good. Stick with the Commanders. If I had to pick a bottom 3, I'd go the Raiders, then the Bucs, and then the Texans, which just so, by the way, is how they're priced. So I'm not breaking any, groundbreaking news here.
Right,
but I would rather go Raiders. I love to fade Russell Wilson because it's Russell Wilson and it's funny. But who knows? He's got a new coach. He's got a new offense. And
we don't know.
They might make things happen. But I think it would be hilarious if he comes out and just is stumbling all over the place. And then we have Raiders D in your bottom 3, but it's coming up clutch.
There's probably going to be some opportunities to use that Tampa Bay defense as a low cost defense this year, because I think their defense is actually not horrible.
Yeah,
but on the road against that's not a great matchup. I mean, yeah, they could get some sacks if they can get some pressure. Maybe they get a turnover, but I don't think this is the week to play Tampa. I think you'll have opportunities when they play maybe some teams in their division, Carolina, teams like that. I just don't think this is the weekend to play them.
All right. Well, we made it through all the different positions. To round this out, we're going to build one lineup here, and whatever lineup we end up with, I will enter it in something, and we'll see how it goes. And just for fun, I mean, we could vote on like which game to go to and everything, because we talked about a number of them, but I feel like the most fun one that we've talked about to me is to go to the Commanders against the Cardinals.
100% is my first recommendation.
Sweet. Awesome. So let's build a Commanders stack and then see what we can fit in around it.
I can't believe that we're starting week 1 by focusing on the Commanders.
This is high class.
No.
Let's go Commanders, Cardinals. But there's a reason for it, and that's because the Cardinals are so bad. I mean, that's what DFS is all about, is you're targeting these bad teams to just go against, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
Right. So, all right. So let me start off like the debate of let's build Washington out first. And to me, it seems like you can go with Sam Howell and some pass catchers. You also theoretically could go with maybe Sam Howell and then Brian Robinson Jr. in the defense, or maybe a pass catcher. Yanni, you're shaking your head. Like, do you have a lean in terms of how to, and you do have to think here too, if people are going to play this stack, where are they going to go? And is it worth it to get a little bit different? What do you think?
I would be very interested in, if you're playing Howell, I think McLaurin and Dotson are very viable. I mean, I think you're stacking all of them at that point. And you could, depending upon what the rest of our budget looks like here. I mean, I think you could work Brian Robinson in there too, or Antonio Gibson. So, but I would start personally with Howell and the two wideouts if it were me.
All right. D, any different thoughts from you, or you agree with that?
Let's just go with that. Yeah.
All right. My only thought on that is like, well, I guess I just wondered, do the running backs and the wide receivers all get off in the same game? But
it's the
especially if they get a big lead and then they turn to Robinson a lot, it could happen, right? So, all right, I'm leaving Robinson off for now until we see what else happens. Do we want to put in Washington's defense as well?
So you have Howell so far, and you have who? You have Howell,
yeah. So I have Howell, McLaurin, and Dotson, and then I was going to put in Washington's defense because that's the one that seemed to be the consensus best here for this week.
Yeah, I think if you're stacking them and we like them anyways, you might as well.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So that leaves us with 6,100. Number one. Do you think we put any Cardinals in? I am fine with not putting any Cardinals in, but I mean, James Conner or Hollywood Brown, I guess, would be probably the places you turn if you want to go to anyone. Any Cardinals, or do we skip them?
It could be a high scoring game, but I'm personally skipping them. Like, yeah, I don't really want any Cardinals in my life right now. So skip them.
We agree. I'm skipping them too. Let's go to tight end. And it seemed like that was a position where we all felt fairly comfortable with moving down a little bit, but it seemed like Goedert was kind of the consensus tight end that we all liked. Should we try to fit him in?
Yeah, throw him in. He's what, 5K? So put him
5K,
in.
and we can always come back to it if we run out of money, as happens sometimes.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time, and then I'm like, I overspent.
It does happen.
I overspent.
It doesn't happen to Yanni when he's playing DFS.
Yeah, he's got so much experience. He's just so damn
all
good.
Right. So running back or wide receiver, are there any, like, it probably would be good if we could fit in at least one lower priced guy, because to create a little space to move up in one of those. Anybody that we really like who's a little bit lower priced at either of those positions?
It's pretty funny that we like Brian Robinson, but we have the Commanders already so much in there. Lower price. I said Rachaad White. Yanni had something decent.
I like Rachaad White. I like Michael Thomas as a lower priced option there. But I like White. I mean, I think he's an interesting play there for sure.
All right. I'm just going to for now, maybe. Just to move it along, I'm putting Rachaad White and Michael Thomas in.
I like it.
So that leaves us with running back and flex, and we're at 76.50. So we need to get one more running back. And I think we all kind of said, like, Ekeler was the only one we really said at the top.
Yep.
And moving down, like, Cam Akers was someone we talked about. We talked about Raheem Mostert as someone who might get a higher amount of touches than normal. We've got the Commanders guys, P. Ryan, and Charbonnet. Those are some of the ones moving down. Out of that group, anybody stick out to you guys?
I'm sorry, did you say we have a receiver and a flex or a running back?
A running back and a flex. We have a running back and a flex. So we do have to get one more running back in there.
I mean, to me, what'd you say our average left is? 7,100?
76.50 right now, and this is where we can start playing with it. So, I mean, we probably don't need to go down to Charbonnet because then we have 10.5 left, and you can't even spend that much. So,
I mean, to me, I feel like you spend the money on a guy like Ekeler here, and because there were a lot of those mid-tier receivers like Olave and Ridley that might fit in the lineup there.
Yeah,
I really like that. I would spend on Ekeler.
All right. That sounds good to me.
We're probably trying to learn here, but in the future we can share our screen and show how we have the lineups all built.
You know what? I
terms
could
of
do that. I didn't know if
Dude,
there
it's
was
just the
anything with
first
my
one,
DraftKings
you know?
account that I didn't want to share, to be
Oh,
honest.
that's true.
That was
Also,
my reason for not, but I need to figure out how to do it for sure.
there's probably a way to, like, I don't know, not have a login and then build it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, total. Well, I actually tried to
Disregard
pull it
that
up without a login and it wouldn't let me. But I'll
just
figure that out for next time. All right, so here's where we're left. We have Sam Howell, Rachaad White, Austin Ekeler, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Michael Thomas, Dallas Goedert, and the Commanders defense. And we have $6,900 left. So at $6,900, we could take Travis Etienne Jr., who I know Yanni is high on, and that would fill out the lineup. The other option, obviously, is to drop down to maybe one of the lower receivers that we liked and to be able to, replace White or replace Thomas is probably where we would go there. So a preference between just running with ETN versus being able to take a step up from White or from Thomas.
I mean,
I do like ETN. Like, and how much is Thomas priced again? At what price?
Thomas is at 5,100.
So a step up would be like Olave at 6,500. Same team. I'd probably rather have Michael
right.
Thomas
So like
at that price point, even though we haven't seen him play in a while.
Yeah, right. Olave is 6,500. Yeah, so he's 1,400 more. Yep.
I do like ETN.
Yeah, I like ETN. I think my only other play, and this is just something that I've really liked, is potentially to go to Zay Flowers and see what that gets us, just because I think that's a steal right now. But Yanni, it looked like you had a thought on that. ETN or somewhere else?
No, I mean, I think obviously, like you said, rounding it out with ETN is good, but I also, you want to find those guys that have the potential to dominate too. And, you start, this is where I think, to me, this is where a lot of DFS gets fun, is when you start, playing around here with this.
Totally.
But, I would like to almost look at that and say, okay, if ETN's 6,900, to your point, like, what if we plugged in Zay Flowers instead of Michael Thomas, for example? What does that get us? Like, what can we get to a Justin Jefferson? Can we get to somebody like that without sacrificing? Can you put a Robinson in instead of White and, get a Justin Jefferson with swapping out Michael Thomas and Zay Flowers, that kind of a thing?
All right, I'm trying those out. It doesn't get us up to Justin Jefferson. It gets us to 8,400. So you could get Cooper Kupp, Nick Chubb, Tyreek Hill, who are, let me see here though too. Let me take out let's see. Well, if we want to leave both of those receivers in, I'm trying to think of how we could get to Justin Jefferson still here.
Yeah, because he's priced at 8,800. I'd personally go with Tyreek Hill at 8,200. I think if you want Jefferson,
you have to lose Ekeler probably. I don't know that you can get to both
Jefferson
of them.
in.
Yeah, and I think, for me, when I look at that, the question you've got to ask is, when you look at like Zay Flowers versus Michael Thomas, do you feel like by going to a Zay Flowers, is that going to be substantial drop off? We don't really know with either of those guys. My concern with Flowers is, number one, he's a rookie, but also that game script, they could get up, and they might not be chucking the ball around a lot. I mean, we don't know. That would be my only concern there. I think when out of the combinations we just mentioned, probably just rolling with ETN would make, to me, the most sense there. But I think you could make the argument either way there.
All right, I got one more thing to throw at you before we decide, and I'm seeing what else we can get here. All right, so here's the other thing you could do. Oh, shoot, I got to look at running back. And we might not have good running back options in here. The other guy we talked about is just a punt is Braxton Berrios, and he's only $3,000. So if you go McLaurin, Dotson, Berrios, you leave Ekeler in there, you get Justin Jefferson as your flex. Goddard's still in there. Then you could go, you'd have 5,700 left. So at your other running back, you could go back to White from Tampa Bay. You have enough to get to him then. That's probably the best option there. It would be him or Mostert in that range. So that would be the other lineup you could get to here is Howell with McLaurin and Dotson, the Commanders defense, and then White and Ekeler at running back, Berrios filling out the wide receivers, Goedert at tight end, and Jefferson in the flex.
I like that a lot. I mean, obviously, like we said, Berrios could get us a goose egg. We don't know, and obviously that could crush you if if he does. But if you get anything out of Berrios there, the rest of your lineup, if Howell and the Commanders put up, hold up their end of the deal, the rest of your lineup is strong. So, I don't hate that if you want to take a flyer with Berrios. I mean, again, it's you trade off. I mean, I think Michael Thomas is obviously a more sure thing than a guy like Braxton Berrios, but then you lose out on Justin Jefferson and, you go with a Travis Etienne or whatever. And not that that's a horrible thing either, but I mean, I think Jefferson, as we know, he's a potential 150 yards, 2 touchdown guy. Not that Etienne's not, but, a little more likely. So I don't know. I think it just depends on if you really want to kind of roll the dice with Berrios or not.
Yeah, I think it's not exactly the decision because there's one other piece that has to get switched out. But for the sake of conversation, you could say Michael Thomas and Travis Etienne or Braxton Berrios and Justin Jefferson, if you're picking between those. And it does feel to me like the floor is better with Mike Thomas and Etienne. The ceiling potentially higher with the other guys.
That's it. Do you want to take a chance and try to go shoot for the stars there? Or do you want to get a couple guys that are going to perform, maybe not explode? I think that's the question you got to ask yourself with that.
If it's in a larger pool, a larger tournament, I'd rather go the high ceiling for sure. So that's, just do high ceiling in this case.
I like that, D, because I think in a little bit larger tournament, not like no one will use Berrios, obviously, but that's probably a nice, low that could really get you an advantage if he does.
He'll only be rostered by 2% of the people. So if he does, score, if he does do something well, you've got a leg up on a lot of people.
Yeah, I like it. All right, I'm going to leave it here. So when I put this video out, I will include this lineup in the description, and no one else has to play it, but I'm going to play it for at least a few bucks, and we'll see how it goes.
Play it. I'll definitely.
Unless one of these guys gets hurt before week 1, then I'm switching it out. I'm not just going to leave it. So
yeah, because technically we still do have 17 days until that Sunday.
We do.
1. So
still time to watch.
Things that happen. Yeah.
Yep. All right, well, guys, thanks for joining me tonight. Yanni, anything you want to say about what's coming up or where people need to go to see all the NFL content that you are about to unleash on the world?
Yeah, betcrushers.com. Follow us at the Bet Crushers. We'll have one divisional betting preview and breakdown out for each division over the next 8 days. And then, we'll have all week 1 a DFS article that'll be similar to our video here. And then obviously bets and prop bets and that kind of thing for week 1 following. So betcrushers.com and at the Bet Crushers on Twitter.
Go do that. And D, you floated a rumor that the podcast might return as you get through a busy summer. What do you see coming up for the NFL season with Wager Rager?
Yep, I've been slacking off on podcasts. I'd like to keep the podcast going. We'll figure out all of the scheduling and everything like that in the coming weeks. But I'd like to get the podcast back, and if not, then we'll figure out a way to do a weekly podcast. We'll post it at wager_rager. I've been slacking a little bit as life has been busy, but it's always good to talk through all of football. So
totally, man. It's been a lot of this has been fun.
Things up again, right? And it's only August. We still got another few weeks until football actually.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, guys, thanks for jumping on. Honestly, this is really fun. I enjoy talking through DFS, and it should be fun to get a little bit more involved this year. So thanks for making it happen.
Appreciate it.
Love it, man.
All right, fellas. I'll see you later.
Take care.